always start presentations by acknowledging and thanking the DuPont family, without whom we would not exist. Mr. DuPont established this foundation in 1995. I just celebrated our 30th anniversary. And we'll talk about how sort of what he envisioned and how that fits together into what we're doing now. And with that, so this picture was taken of the first board of directors shortly after the foundation was established. So these are some of the early planning meetings, and some of these folks are actually still around with us. Our first director, Dr. Wiggers there, Mike McShane, who is our previous board of directors chairman, and Mr. Batty, Colton Batty, who was the attorney for Mr. DuPont, was also the chairman of our board of directors and has also been one of our generous supporters over time. And then that leads us a little bit more to today. So when I started, one of the things that they were interested in doing here was developing a strategic plan. We'd never really had a formal strategic planning process. So we actually went through that with members of our staff, and then I don't have a good photo of the board, but we went back and forth between the board and the staff to build a lot of what I'll be talking about here today. But you can imagine these were some fun meetings. We had some folks that weren't overly thrilled about sitting down with Post-it notes and expressing their feelings, but we did manage to capture, I think, some really great thoughts, and you can see little pieces of it in some of the things I'll be sharing with you today. But I wanted to mention there's a sort of a common thread in the philosophies that underpin my thinking, I think the foundation's thinking, and where we came from, and they all stem from this gentleman here. His name is, or was, Jim Tier. He was president of the Wildlife Society. He was truly one of the really towering figures in wildlife in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. He was the director of the Welder Foundation, where I was a fellow and one of my mentors. He also was the man that Mr. DuPont went to when he was wanting to establish Nemours, and he kind of architected how Nemours was built. So way back in the 90s, when I was a fellow at the Welder Foundation, at the same time, they were actually planning Nemours. So a lot of, I think, these common threads of what we are and how we operate really emanate from Dr. Tier. Just a little brief orientation. One of the things that you will notice as you're looking at this big landscape, this big developed landscape here, is that we are located in this big green spot. One of the last great places on Earth, as the Nature Conservancy described it. And as we zoom this out, the Ace Basin, this is a little bit of an illustration of the property. If you've ever never been out here before, again, just kind of some general orientation pieces. We actually come down and touch 21 on the way to Beaufort there. And then after you get past Gardens Corner and Big Estate, we're on both sides of the road, all the way up to the Harriet Tubman Bridge there. It's a beautiful property. It's huge, about 10,000 acres in total. A very diverse property. I think it's one of the things that really sets us apart from a lot of other organizations like us, which there aren't very many of, but the few that are, is the diversity of habitat types we have, everything from pine forest to oak woodlands, to old fields. And really what we're most known for is the wetlands, the managed tidal impoundments and natural marshes that we have here. But we're going to be talking a whole lot about those today. We're going to be getting more into kind of the thinking and that we're working around to maximize what we can do with that amazing property. So there are really three, we call them pillars, that underpin what we do here. Science and research, land stewardship, and education and outreach. And I always hate to use the word pillar when we describe what we do, because pillar evokes this image of these sort of freestanding, separate things. They're not freestanding and separate. They all interact with each other. It's really more of an interactive process, more of a Venn diagram. That the science and research we do informs our land stewardship. We use our land as a vessel for research. The science and research and land stewardship we do as part of our education outreach so that we can teach the things that we learn and inform people and help others with their land management decisions and their conservation decisions. And in the middle of this is leadership, and this is a piece that we're working on developing more of really building the next generation of leaders, as well as being able to help current leaders in there so that they can be informed and have perspectives on conservation that are helpful. So anyway, this is really the kind of conceptual model of what we're working on here. As I was thinking about how to capture all of this today, the mission vision statements are kind of high level, catches a lot in one broad thing. But part of what we did in our planning process was we really broke apart those mission vision statements into a series of we believes and a series of value statements. So what I'm going to do is kind of walk through our we believe statements and a few of the value statements and talk about what they mean and then give you some illustrations of how we're acting on those. First one, we believe that human well-being ultimately hinges on ecosystem well-being and that people and nature are intrinsically connected. So what do I mean by that? So we see a lot of little happy faces here holding up crabs. This is what I call our holistic model, and this part of this is fairly well established. Part of it is somewhat novel that we've kind of developed ourselves. But I'll walk through what this means. So nature conservation, when we conserve nature, it produces what we call ecosystem services. So a healthy natural ecosystem provides things to us. It provides clean water. It provides fisheries that produce crabs, things of that nature. And then this improves human well-being. So as you can see from all these little smiling faces out there, these are people that are living better lives due to the ecosystem services that are provided through nature conservation. And then the last piece of this, the one that we've added in, and something that I think is actually really a focal point of what we're doing here, is what we call societal services. And so what this link is that if we conserve nature, we produce ecosystem services, functional intact ecosystems, providing things like crabs and fisheries and things like that. This improves human well-being. And if the humans can connect the dots from nature to human well-being, they will then do things that will promote nature conservation. And there's a variety of ways they can do that. They can make decisions in their own backyard of how they manage their own little backyard habitats. They can make decisions at the grocery store. They can support it through philanthropy. They can become young professionals like some of the ones we have here with us today. And then ultimately, that promotes nature conservation. This is really what we want to generate, is this whole feedback loop. And we want to be operating kind of in all of those spaces of being able to promote nature conservation, be able to quantify and describe the ecosystem services that are provided, to be able to help humans to understand how this is affecting their lives, and then hopefully having those people then promoting nature conservation over time. All right. We believe that experiencing wild places, immersion in the outdoors, and interacting with the natural world enriches people's lives, and these experiences are crucial to human well-being. So a couple of the key components there, this enriching of people's lives. I think this is something that's awfully hard to quantify in a lot of time, in a lot of spaces, but I think it's truly universal, and we'll talk a little bit more about that on some of our other statements. But you know, this is from one of our nature education programs, our Coastal Kids program in its first iteration. But you know, this is enriching a lot of lives. This is getting kids away from their screens. This is getting them out dirty and sandy and interacting with the actual natural real world. And even just the piece of something like sitting out and watching an alligator floating in an impoundment at sunrise is something that enriches your life. You know, it's hard to quantify what that does for you, but it's, I believe, and I think most people would agree, it's good for your soul, it's good for your mental health. These are enriching things. And then just again, the opportunity to go out and explore and be part of nature. There's a lot of evidence. One of the books that we often cite is an author named Richard Louv, who wrote a book called The Nature Deficit Disorder, or Last Child in the Woods, Saving Our Kids from the Nature Deficit Disorder. He wrote that book 2000, I believe it was 2007. So it was almost 20 years ago that he was already cataloging all of the ways that modern society and divorcing from nature is affecting young people. And that's only magnified, I would say, significantly in the past 20 years. all sorts of, I could rattle off statistics for a long time, but one of the amazing ones is that currently the average kid spends less than 10 minutes a day in unstructured outdoor play. They also then spend 7 hours in front of some kind of screen. Average kid in America. It's really, and these kids are, when you think about it, these folks are going to become the people who are making decisions about nature and about conservation in the future. If they don't have a connection, what kind of decisions are they going to be making? All right, next statement. We believe that nature, and by extension, humanity, faces an uncertain future with seemingly insurmountable threats on the horizon. So this one is a little bit of a darker, we believe, statement, but certainly something that is very true. We are experiencing all sorts of crises around the world. I'll talk about a couple of them just a moment. But one of the things we really want to do here, though, is to promote optimism, conservation optimism. We don't want to have a sense that this is all hopeless, that climate change is going to end humanity, and artificial intelligence and all of these things are all just insurmountable things that we can't overcome. We absolutely can. And I think that one of the things we want to always focus on is that we are not powerless. We can change these things. We can make the right decisions. We can make a difference. But some of the things that we're seeing that are concerning are things like biodiversity declines and amphibian species. We look at things like quail, and this is a good illustration of something that a lot of people around here care deeply about is quail and quail hunting. It's the economic engine, another way to engage in the outdoors. Quail population, which is really sort of mirrors a lot of grassland bird populations and shrubland bird populations around the country and around the world, have declined precipitously in recent years. When you look at the decline in the Earth's biodiversity overall, this is a sort of staggering statistic when you look at how much all of these things have declined again just in the last 50 years. Again, it's a global thing. We have time to act on this, but the time is now. So we need to be engaged in doing all that we can. We believe that in the face of these threats, providing hope, their engagement, empowerment, and facilitating effective action are paramount. So, got Michael right there. This is Michael's one of our great success stories. I'll just do a quick sidebar into Michael, who is here with us today. Michael actually came from Clemson, and this is him in this class right here. He then came and did an internship, an exchange program we did with the Welder Foundation. He's back again now as our lead technician on the property, and he'll be starting graduate school under a Welder or a Nemours research fellowship in the fall. So this is exactly the kind of success story I want to create more of going from that early phase. Ideally, I'd like to have met Michael when he was about 7, and have been able to walk him through all that. But we hope to be able to ride this whole arc for all of Michael's career and for the people that are coming behind him. And these are just some illustrations of the type of things we want to do. This is optimism. We can use technology for good. This is one of our other research fellows. I'll talk a little bit more about his research towards the end, sharing some of his amazing work that he's doing out there. But you can see the optimism. We can solve these problems. We can make a difference in these things. We can take kids out. We can get them. We can train the next little generation of scientists. And you can see the type of joy that you can inspire. Again, this is inspirational stuff, and all the way from little ones all the way up to big ones. We believe that effective conservation action is underpinned by solid science that provides the evidence base for informed decision making. So I wanted to touch on this one briefly. I think, again, these were written, it's interesting how times are already shifting. It seems like we're in a time of a lot of change. Solid science is the big piece of this. And then the second part is that it provides an evidence base. So when we talk about science, science is something that recently has, I think, come under some degree of attack. It's actually been somewhat upsetting to see that people are questioning the validity of science. Real briefly, science is an objective search for truth. It isn't partisan. It's not trying to promote a position. It is a process for finding truth, finding evidence to make decisions. It doesn't make decisions. It provides evidence to make decisions. And solid science is the only way that we can do that. So that's one of the things that we want to make sure that the science we're doing provides that evidence base that allows us to make, and others to make informed decisions, make decisions as we choose, but we need to have that solid, unbiased, objective evidence base. And these are some of the researchers, some of the projects we're working on. This is actually Stephen Clements here, another success story, a graduate student that just finished his PhD 2 weeks ago and will actually be starting as our new wildlife scientist in about 2 weeks from now. So we're very excited to welcome Stephen, one of his interns. He's studying bioenergetics of ducks and waterfowl in general, and how the impoundment systems and really the whole bioenergetic model on the eastern seaboard operates. This matters not only to ducks, but it matters to shorebirds, matters to fish, matters to a lot of things. This is a piece of one of the research projects that Heather actually coordinates, our education outreach coordinator you met earlier. You saw that at the beginning of our presentation. This is part of a MAPS bird banding station, which feeds into a national database, providing, again, objective evidence about how bird populations are fluctuating over time. Young research technicians, this is one of our interns from last year, and out gathering data for us. And these are some folks from USCB. They're looking at water quality, another piece of what we want to study here. Got a USCB fan in the audience? All right, we believe that conservation science can provide an evidence base, but that conservation actions rely on people's actions in response to this evidence. And one of the things you're probably starting to feel here as I'm talking about this, there's a lot about people here. People always say, you know, you're a wildlife foundation, everything you're doing is wildlife. We study wildlife, we want people to interact with wildlife, we try to facilitate that interaction. But really, all the things that we do don't matter if people don't know about them, if people don't care about them. That's where things actually moves the needle. So again, people's actions are what are actually going to change things, not necessarily the science in isolation. And for that reason, the building that you're sitting in right here, we actually just christened this a little over a year ago. The purpose of this space is to provide a venue so that we can bring people here and teach them, and to provide an opportunity for engagement, for interaction in this space. And this is one of the workshops that we had here last year. This was in September last year. This was on managing waterfowl and waterfowl impoundments. We had over 60 folks at this meeting. Kind of a funny sidebar story on this. This was the day that Hurricane Helene was hitting. And if anyone wonders if Helene caught everybody flat-footed around here, all of the waterfowl managers for probably 3 counties were all here and not out getting ready for the storm that actually ended up doing quite a bit of damage all over this whole region, actually here as well. But anyway, this is the very beginning of these. We've had a few of these. Heather has a teacher training coming up where she'll be teaching some educators in conservation. We plan to do a lot more of these. We're just getting this off the ground. We've been using a lot for these discovery series, but more structured, full workshops on specific topics is something that we will be launching as we go into next year in a similar model. And also just spreading the word. This is actually one of our board members. You know, it's not just our staff, but it's our board as well. It's Dr. Mariah Whitehead. She was giving a presentation at one of our events, again, trying to rally the troops towards conservation action. So it really is. It's a full family all the way from the board to the staff. We believe that science-based solutions and sustainable land management practices that we help develop should be scalable with applicability throughout the region, nation, and even internationally. So this is a big philosophical concept that we're trying to work around in determining what kind of research we undertake. And the key pieces here, sustainable land management. So they should be applicable to things like managing our property, but also then properties like ours and ecosystems like ours around the country and even internationally. And a lot of the questions that we're trying to address are related to those. This is a research project, our first graduate research fellow recipient, soon to be Dr. Marion Boucher. So she's looking at microplastics and PFAS, forever chemicals, and how they bioaccumulate in alligators. This has human health implications beyond just alligators. We're both sort of apex predators at the top of the food chain. Things accumulate in us. like they do in alligators. She's doing some really cutting edge research in this space. We also eat alligators, so there's a piece of that as well. And these types of questions, microplastics are a global question, and the type of research that she's doing will provide evidence that will inform global decision making on things like microplastics. Our impoundments, these are certainly, I think, again, one of the things that truly makes us unique here. We're in the low country. You think about the questions we're asking. Low country with sea level rise, what does that mean? We are a great model for exploring the ramifications, the ways to manage in response to rising sea levels. We have a giant replicated experiment essentially on the property here with these different impoundment structures. There's a ton of work that we can do in this space. We're really just scratching the surface, I think, on what we can do there. But again, global ramifications, think about it around the world. Low countries around the world are going to be experiencing similar things to what we are. And what we study here, hopefully, will be applicable at that scale. And the last one I wanted to mention was our new flagship program, our Eco Pasture Initiative involving grazing. So this is again something that's happening all over the world. They're doing variations of this in Europe and as well as in the Northeast, different parts of the country. And the types of questions we're asking there are going to have implications of everything from animal health to human health to soil health, which is what this professor, Dr. Lydia Halloran, and her graduate student are working on here at Nemours. But again, it's a whole ecosystem response. This is a global question. How do we produce meat? How do we essentially take and sort of forgotten technology, the cow, and apply it in a way that is not only sustainable but beneficial to the environment? And how can we study and measure those responses? We believe experiential hands-on outdoor learning opportunities are increasingly rare, and through the beauty and wonder of Nemours, we have a unique ability to offer these rare experiences to students both young and old. So some of what we were talking about a little bit earlier about kids and the nature deficit disorder, adults, a lot of adults have a nature deficit disorder there as well. And I feel like we have a truly unique opportunity with what we have here at Nemours. So this is part of our Coastal Kids program that we launched. I guess we're now in our third year of that, if I remember correctly. So we've gone through various iterations of that and have improved it significantly over time. This is small groups. This model is actually built very differently than the traditional sort of nature camp model. In that what we do is much more hands-on, things you can't do with a large group of kids. We want these to be teachable adventures, as one of our colleagues describes them. And in order to do that with little ones, you need to have a very high student to teacher ratio. We have three or 4 to 1 kids to students, or kids to professors. I have some very experienced folks there. We have a retired veterinarian, state veterinarian, Heather. Obviously, they're in the foreground. One of the educators at Spring Island, they're in the background. We do this in conjunction with Spring Island Trust. But anyway, this is one of our real flagship programs that we are looking to hopefully scale up in the future. It's tough for us because, when we write grants and things like that, the metrics they always want to see is the number of kids reached. They want a head count. They want to say you had, 10,000 kids on school buses that came through our program. I would argue that an hour and going through in a school bus full of kids, you didn't reach any of them, that you actually reached 0. We're maybe only reaching a handful, but we're actually reaching them. And that's kind of the model that we're working on, but it does present challenges in terms of trying to write grants and things of that nature. We also work with all the way up through high school. This is the WEP team, which is high school kids go out and write wildlife habitat management plans. Clemson runs this program. We've been sponsors of this program for quite a few years, so we're reaching that next level, next age group, all the way up to adults. And this is part of some of the work we're doing with our Discovery series, where we take adults out, we do presentations on various topics, and we take them out onto the property so that they can see all of these things firsthand. All right. We believe Nemours is a special place with significant cultural history, and it's our obligation to respect the past and lead into the future as exemplary stewards of this historically and ecologically irreplaceable landscape. So when we look out at this is an aerial, actually looking just out the window in front of me of these historic rice fields. One of the things you'll hear me say if you spend much time with me out here is that the nexus between cultural history and ecology and conservation here is truly unique. I've been fortunate to have been able to work all around the country and to some extent, and when I was doing my conservation planning work around the world, I've never seen anywhere where all of those things really come together like they do here. This is a heavily human altered landscape. It looks, wild in a way, but these are all rice fields that were dug out by hand by enslaved people that you're looking at there. And then the Combahee River, which has a lot of historic significance. I will mention just a moment. These dikes you see running around the edges, these were all originally built by hand by enslaved people. Forests were cleared. There's a whole arc that goes through the industrialists up through modern conservation that all is this intersection between cultural history and conservation. This river here, the Combahee, was the topic of a book written by Dr. Etta Fields Black. She actually wrote a lot of the book in the house, big house behind us. We hosted her while she was writing. This book just won the Pulitzer Prize for history, but it's all about Harriet Tubman and the Combahee River Raid. One of the plantations that was liberated during that raid is actually a part of Nemours that's featured quite heavily in that book. But really fascinating. We hosted a big book launch for her. Actually, when that started, it was the first event we had in the hall when it opened last spring. And it really is just a place of wonder. So these things, with all of that cultural history, it does things like produce this giant salamander you see in the foreground there, an Amphiuma. These are some of the biggest salamanders in America. We have two of the biggest salamanders in America here. Most people have never seen them. But again, a lot of these are living in what were historic rice fields. I mean, this is that nexus of cultural history and conservation. And then there's the landscape around us. This is what that provides the birds, which provide these educational opportunities. I mean, it really is this combination is really unique. This is another piece of our Coastal Kids program. Some bird banding. We believe our greatest contributions as a foundation lie in the people we inspire to care, the knowledge we give them to act, and the conservation leaders we help to develop and empower. It's interesting, when I was looking back through, there was a letter that kind of more than a letter, it was almost more of a sort of how-to guide that after meeting with Mr. DuPont that Dr. Tier wrote. And at the very end of it, he wrote a very similar statement to this. I didn't find that until actually we had written this ourselves. But he talked about this, that really the greatest product from, think about what's your product. Greatest product from our organization and from an organization like Welder isn't necessarily the pure science or anything like that, but actually the Michaels of the world that are going to go out and change the world, we hope, and that we've hopefully given them a greater set of tools to be able to go out and do that. And so this is an example of, in sharing the good word and hopefully inspiring people to act. This was a big donor event that we had last year. This is again Dr. Clements, who will be joining us as our wildlife scientist here soon, teaching folks about his work and the value of wild forages versus corn, which is traditionally planted in a lot of these impoundments. And these are some of our interns. We've had a very robust intern program over the years. This one is actually at Clemson right now. I think he's starting a doctoral program, if I understand correctly. This gentleman's with Ducks Unlimited, both named Jake. We only hire Jakes. That's one of our. It's in the fine print. But these are some of the folks that have gone on. We've had a lot of interns over the years that have gone on to do important things, and I'm hoping that as we get more structure around these programs and that this fellowship program really takes off, that we'll be able to track these young professionals' progressions and feel like we had some role in the success that they have and then that multiplier effect out through their careers. Okay, I'm only going to put up a couple of our values. We have a whole list of values too, but I figured you guys had probably read enough text, so I'm only going to put up a few. I'll only make you read a couple of our core values. But one of the huge ones for us is the value of collaboration. We value the contributions of our partners in science education, land stewardship, and policy, and we seek to develop collaborative partnerships to achieve common goals. So one of the I guess it's a double-edged thing, but you could call it a limitation, also an advantage. We are small and nimble here at Nemours, and I'll talk about that a little bit at the very end. But we really rely on a lot on the work of our partners. We have a staff of 9 folks here. So if we're going to do impactful science, 9 folks are not going to be able to do that with all the other roles that we're all playing. So we're going to need to have university partners, nonprofit partners, governmental agencies, things like that come in and work with us. The same with land stewardship and policy. It really is, we're a convening space. We're a place to bring people, to help them to do their work and to provide our input, and obviously with the we believe statements and our other values of the things that fit into those models. But this is really a lot of what we can, I think, excel in, is this partnership model. And this is just an illustration. These are some of the partners that we've worked with just in the last 18 months. In various capacity. You can see there's a whole host, all the way from the air stations to the land trusts, a variety of universities and other partnering organizations. So this is really one of our, I think, our strong suits, is bringing together, forming these partnerships and leveraging what we can do collectively. Leadership. We lead by example as land stewards, scientists, educators, and partners. We inspire others, and in doing so, the collective impacts of our accomplishments are multiplied. So there's a little bit of overlap there with our collaborative concept, but the idea of hopefully helping to lead some of these collaborative partnerships. And I'll just give you one illustration. There's a lot of these that we could list here. But one of the projects that we're actually just in the early phases of, we have Nemours here. And then we have several other organizations. We're kind of unique animals. There's not a lot of large private land holding nonprofit research foundations that are private like ourselves. There's one in Texas, the one I mentioned earlier, where I worked many years ago. There are a couple in South Georgia, and then there's one down in South Florida, and there's a handful more scattered around. But one of the things that we're hoping to do is to be able to organize ourselves so that we can work better together, because we have a lot of advantages, particularly in the current landscape. Where universities are struggling, I think, to get funding, and they've got a lot of challenges with bureaucratic overhead and things like that. Obviously, there's been a lot of defunding of federal research recently. So I think this really presents an opportunity for us as private organizations to, again, leverage these partnerships and do something important. And this was about a month ago. A lot of the stuff's new. We got a lot of new things going on right now. But the director of Welder, the director of the Jones Center at Itchaway. Welder is about an 8,000 acre property near Corpus. Jones Center at Itchaway is in South Georgia, Newton, Georgia. It's a 30,000 acre property, amazing longleaf habitat. And then myself, and then a bunch of researchers from Nemours and from the Jones Center there that all came down. And we're in the very early phases of planning a get together to kind of launch this concept. And the 3 of us, Dr. Klexig, Dr. James, and myself, have been sort of independently thinking on it for a long time. And so it's really exciting to see this actually coming together. I think it has just tremendous potential. Again, I think an opportunity for us to lead the nonprofit landholding research foundations into the future. Inclusion. We're an inclusive organization that recognizes and respects differing perspectives and seek to diversify the field of conservation and include those who felt excluded or disconnected from wildlife and nature. And there's a variety of ways you can think about this, of folks that feel like they have not had a stake in this. And I think that can go all the way from sort of urbanites who feel like in a city, nature doesn't affect me, all the way to a variety of other groups, and we'll talk about those a little bit. One of the things that we work with the Outdoor Green Foundation to take kids that are sick, hunting and fishing, as a way to interact with the environment. Again, this is not something that's been accessible to everyone that has these challenges. Something that we're very proud of here. Another illustration of that, we've begun partnering with the Penn Center on St. Helena Island to get kids from St. Helena out here. I think one of the real challenges and one of the frankly failings in wildlife conservation has been that it has been a largely white dominated field for a very long time. And I think it's one of the real opportunities we have in conservation is that it is a bipartisan, has historically been a very bipartisan issue. People all breathe the same air. They all enjoy being outdoors in nature. This is just a human thing. And at a time when we're so polarized, I feel like this is a great opportunity for us to bring people together. And if we're going to affect change in the future, we need to make sure that we have all different faces, all different perspectives represented and having a seat at that table and a voice in that conversation. So we're actively working in that space as well. And our last value that I will, oh, I got one more, two more values left. Creativity. So we look to the future and think creatively to explore innovative solutions to environmental challenges. And we look to the past to learn from traditional knowledge, rediscover forgotten practices. Minds are always open to evaluate our efforts. So a couple of kind of concepts here. This goes back a little bit to what I've mentioned earlier in research. But we want to work in both spaces at the same time of being able to really look into the past. There's a lot to learn from the past, I think, but then to apply modern science techniques to be able to explore those things. Eco Pasture Initiative is a wonderful illustration of this. These were cattle that this area has been grazed for a very long time. We use Piney Woods cattle, which are a land raised breed. I've got a whole presentation on Piney Woods, which I don't get me started on that because I'll veer off into an hour of talking about cattle grazing. But this is a sort of forgotten thing in the Low Country. The cattle grazing has really gone away in this region, and we are bringing it back. And we're doing it with through scientific methods and in ways that are not only wildlife friendly, but are actually wildlife promoting. So you take this very old technique of grazing cattle on the landscape, you apply things like these radio collars you see here, and you multiply that times another, even older piece of the landscape, which is fire. Prescribed fire was how we apply it today, but what would have been natural fires or fires that were lit by Native Americans. Multiply all that together, get your cattle collared up, and you can do things like this, where you can actually use digital fencing. This is all GPS, all through satellites that we can talk to these collars. We can see their locations. We can actually see heat maps. I didn't have that video up here, but see a heat map of how they're actually utilizing that landscape. So we're using an ancient technique, applying very modern technology to explore it. And ultimately, things like this little R2D2 unit is actually sucking carbon out of the soil. So we're looking at how soil carbon is responding to our grazing. So again, very modern technology answering very big picture questions using a very ancient technique. Rice trunks, there's an ancient technology. If you're not familiar with rice trunks, these are the water control structures that we use to manage the property that haven't changed a whole lot in several hundred years. This is a drawing of one. This is a current one. It's right out the window here. See, those are very much the same. And these do things like produce waterfowl. Waterfowl has a variety. Obviously, these are important ecologically, they're important culturally, they're important economically. And so we manage these wetlands for waterfowl, shorebirds, and other species. But then how do we measure our impacts? How do we measure how well we're doing in managing the waterfowl, or really just waterfowl populations in general? Well, here we start getting into the future. This is one of the graduate research fellows that we'll be supporting starting this fall. He's actually already been working with us for a year. We've been providing housing and a research station for him, but he'll be officially a fellow come this fall. He's using drones to quantify our waterfowl habitat. So you think about their waterfowl. So you think about that picture earlier of ducks in open water like that. That's not usually how they look. It's usually very hard to figure out how many ducks, what species of ducks you have. He is using drones and thermal imaging so that you can see them without disturbing them. So you don't have to drive around and spook them and stress them to count them, and you can actually see them moving across the landscape and even how they're using the landscape. So again, this combination of taking old concepts, old ideas to manage, and then applying modern scientific techniques so that we can quantify our impacts. All right, I think this is my last value here. There we are. All right. Our last value, and this one's a little bit long and wordy, but there's a lot to say here, and that is gratitude. We appreciate the gift that was given by the DuPont family, the efforts of those who first developed Nemours, and the generosity of our donors and supporters. We appreciate the conservation visionaries and leaders whose efforts protected the natural resources we enjoy today, all those that are here with us today, and those who will soon join us on our mission to make the world a better place tomorrow. So kind of coming full circle here, we would not be here if were it not for the DuPont family. They've, Mr. DuPont, left the land that we are so fortunate to have the opportunity to work on. Truly a great gift to society and certainly to conservation. When his wife Laura passed, she left an endowment for us, which allows us to run our operations from that endowment, which allows us to maximize the impact of our donors. That's certainly something that we're trying to build out as we go forward. We do have to raise funds because we have this endowment, which again supports our ability to operate. It's a 10,000 acre property, and it's quite expensive just to maintain. Essentially, what's a giant laboratory? You can think of it like a great cathedral or something. To maintain the structure takes quite a bit, and we fortunately are able to do that with the endowment we're left. However, growth, and if we're going to scale things up like Coastal Kids, or do more research, or do things at a greater scale, we're going to have to raise funds to do that. And so that'll be a piece of what we do going forward. But we were very grateful for the opportunity and be able to work in that space, and it would not be possible for these people. These are some of our donors and supporters who happen to also be related. If you can pick him out, that's Mr. Batty, from the original picture, who is still with us today, is still a donor and supporter, still on our board, and is still a great contributor there. And that's Jean's daughter, Gigi, who is also one of our long-term donors, long-term supporters, very engaged in everything that we do out here. And these are just some illustrations of some of the people that we're so very grateful to. And lastly, I wanted to thank our team. We have, as I said, we jokingly call ourselves a small but mighty team, but this is an incredibly hardworking group of individuals we have out here. All the work that you've seen described there, at least all the groundwork for that, is all done by that little tiny cohort of folks there, and then a handful of interns that we have conscripted to come and work with us. But it's a wonderful team. It's a wonderful group to work with, and just a tremendous opportunity. And I can say that I personally am very grateful for that opportunity. I think this is an opportunity to really affect change and do something truly meaningful, and to, I think, really capitalize on the gifts that were given to us by the DuPont family, by many donors over the years, by the many students, by the many staff that have come through over time. And I'm quite honored and quite grateful to be at the helm for this next chapter. And with that, that concludes. If we can do all of the things we want to do there, and realize the things that we've expressed in the we believe statements, and all of our values, I think we have the opportunity to really make the world a better place for all the little smiling faces, and many more smiling faces throughout the region, and even around the country and around the world. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Very impressive.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We are as concerned as are you about the cuts in funding, and are doing our part in terms of contacting with bigger, our representatives, who I try to represent on my behalf.
Represent.
Yeah, they work for me.
Right.
Other than that, which is done with dedication by lots of us, are there any other measures, those of us that support conservation with, vigor and dedication? Is there anything else we can do? Support, obviously, operations like this, but politically?
Yeah, I think there's, civic engagement is extremely important, and I think what you're describing is one of the things when I was doing conservation planning, talked about leverage of strategies and sort of how to leverage things so that you get maximum leverage. And when you get up to that level where you're actually affecting legislation, those are high level things, but they're quite challenging to, because you have to, have a consensus of people behind you and the politicians on board. It's challenging to do. But I think, writing those letters, having your voice heard, voices matter. People care about their constituents. And then supporting the organizations that are pushing for the causes that you care about. One of the things that I'm in the collaborative piece that I've kind of touched on briefly. The Ace Basin is the most collaborative sort of ecosystem of conservation organizations I've ever gotten to work with. It really is remarkable. The Ace Basin Task Force that does land conservation work around here that we're members of. Everyone in that group, which includes Audubon Society, Nature Conservancy, Open Land Trust, Low Country Land Trust, Asset Land Trust, private landowners, Fish and Wildlife Service, SCDNR. It's a really amazingly collaborative group, but supporting those entities, and you can support them in different ways. The governmental entities, you can write letters of support to say they're doing good work. You can philanthropically support the other conservation organizations that are here. There's a variety of ways to engage there, but also just spreading the word and being an advocate. That's one of the things we want to help produce is people to go out and advocate in their communities for conservation related.
Who are your best friends in the South Carolina legislature right now? Who are some legislators that you might cite for dedication to conservancy?
Oh my goodness, we have a lot of people that we work with legislatively. I don't want to name any names just because I hate to. I hate to.
Purposely did not ask you to slam any.
Yeah, exactly. No, I don't
Who's
want
the
to.
state House of Representatives for this land right here?
So, one of the well, I'd really rather not get into too much naming. I was actually listening on the radio on the way in today about how we have to be careful as nonprofits to not endorse a candidate, and I would hate to have that misconstrued as an endorsement. But we do work with a variety of state legislators, and we can maybe talk about it a little bit more offline.
Yes.
Mhm. Well, with that, I guess we will conclude. Thank you all for attending.
Yes, thank you all for attending. Andrew, thank you so much for walking us through all of our beliefs and values. This was a great overview of the Nemours Wildlife Foundation. And for the people online virtually, you'll get a recording link if you missed the beginning, and I'll send it to everybody as well that's in person as well. So thank you for your attendance. And if you're in person, stick around and talk to us a little bit more. If you're online, thanks for tuning in.